So my presentation is more about the, great, super. Sorry. I'm so used, you know, to do this. I'm sorry, that's very funny. Yeah, so it's more like descriptive thing, not very analytical maybe, but what my thoughts were of the last year in terms of how the workflow was changed and what could we or should we do in this situation. And my presentation is called what changes face cultural institutions in their public role and hidden workflows, if any. And I don't think we have a lot to change actually. So the first thoughts are about how the workflow changed, and there are some dots. You can see that it's of course increase of the digital work, because turning to my own experience and experience of my colleagues from the museum, and our museum is concentrated not on art collection, but on collection of art history, I would say recent history of the unofficial Soviet art and contemporary art in Russia. So we collect documentation about the chronology and personalities of that history. It's not the art collection in terms of the classical museum. And our digital work increased, so we were working from home a lot of, most of the time, so it might be remote work, of course. And the most concerns were cataloging things and curating, all of our colleagues were doing digital exhibitions, of course. And most of the big institutions did some kind of, I call it isolation portals, which are actually separate portals, separate websites for educational and further purposes for the general public they used to work with before the pandemic. Of course, there was flourishing virtual guided tours in our museum as well, and as you can see, this SMR format as well, and any other kinds of contemporary formats of communicating through the digital space with the public. And a lot of questions aroused concerning the physical funds, the physical bodies of our collections actually, and I've seen that a lot of museums, at least Western museums, I've seen were working with this topic a lot and making some collaborative seminars and producing some instructions how to deal in this situation with the security of the collections, with duties of the staff of the museum, how to keep up with the physical body of the collection, you know, not the digital one, because digital one is okay more or less in these terms. And there a lot of collaborating was in our case as well with other institutions, because we've had a huge increase of requests for digital materials, of course, as you can imagine. And not only from institutions, but from the researchers as well, who were working on their theses in some, I don't know, in US or wherever you want to imagine. And we're not able to come because we have, for example, as scholarship for summer visit for a month for researchers, and they were not able to come for this. You know, they won the scholarships, but they were not able to enter Russia. So and we had to provide some information sensitive in terms of copyright and whatever. Yeah, but to be honest, I was very inspired that people still are doing their research and whatever. So I was supporting this kind of interactions between the museum, but it's something really new because, I mean, the museum is very conservative anyway institution in terms of contemporary situation. And I mean, it's not very easy to deal with this copyright sensitive material right now in this kind of digital increase of digital work. And this fifth point here is data analysis, but not in the way that's determined in like in business space, for example, a very particular thing, but more broader, think as working with data right now, what we should do, what we could do right now. I thought that, and then there were some examples of what I've already said and what I think would be great to do in this situation, maybe. So there are some examples of what was done by the institutions in Russia. It's very like, to be honest, St. Petersburg and Moscow centralized choice, because there were more initiatives from different places of Russia, of course, but it's just an example. And you can see that there is this CMR project, and there are several portals which were made especially for the pandemic time. And some of them were already concerning about the things I would like to also to raise here, that inclusiveness, for example, because, you know, if we go from the physical space to digital, so there is the problem of digital divide rises. And for example, this the tritic of the right down angle. This is the Tritic of Gallery, which was the website which says here the Tritikovka for older generation, for example. You know, is a lot of projects were done for children because a lot of people were sitting with children at home and schools were not working and so on. Yeah, so there was the, like the museums were trying to grasp the whole audience they could and to help to cope the situation for. With the pandemic. I mean, this is at least some approaches which can be visible in this situation. And yeah, what I mean about data analysis, this is what we actually could do and turn to, because this is just an article I based my some suggestions here in this presentation. This is the Search Business Analytics portal, and the article is about analysis of how museums are, like Western museums are working, most US museums actually are working with the data analysis, and there are like two options here. One is the using of data of visitors, and now with like physical visitors turn into digital visitors. And I've heard already from German colleagues that before pandemic they were not very concentrated on what's going on in digital space, more on the physical space and collecting data from physical visitors. And now it's like more turned to the website visitors and so on. So it's like recognizable field for more recognizable field for the museum. And this analysis of US practice, which is like of the last year, not even the current one, yeah. So it was before the pandemic. Says that it's very expensive thing to do actually for the museums to have this kind of analytical departments, yeah, who can work with this data. And in terms of budget, it's very expensive. So for a lot of small museums, it's not affordable thing to do. And it's also not only funding questions, but also the ethic question, because it's usage of the data. Of course, people should be agreed with this and what we do with this data afterwards, you know. And another question, and another thing is that we can use the data of the collections, yeah, or we can gather the data according to the competences of the museum, which I will like a bit tell later what I mean. So here I say that we can concentrate on our own data, what we have, and yeah, let's just see the examples. So the funniest thing is that all the examples I provide here are not about art actually yet, except one which I did myself last year. Yeah, but it's maybe connected to my field of interest because I'm working with the art history and the historical documents about recent Russian art. Yeah, so this is one, and all the examples which is interesting are from the like late 2000s and early 2010s, which says to us more or less in this which is for me a marker of the thing that we already have a lot of instruments to work with, and the pandemic doesn't change the situation much. It just brings us back to this kind of work, and it makes us to concentrate on this kind of work, yeah, that others which are more connected to the physical space of the music. And this is one of the examples maybe you all know very well. It's Old Bailey Archive, which it's like, and what I wanted to say that in terms of data analysis of the collections, we should communicate, of course, with and collaborate with universities, with other museums, and with the general public as well. And there is also a few ethical questions, which I also mention later. And that's just an example of how people can work with the big data, or I would say middle data, mid data. There's the term which is used in museum sphere more, because we don't have like really, really big data. We normally have this kind of mid data. Yeah, and this is the text analysis project which was done in UK, and this is London Criminal Court like text body which was analyzed, and there is a lot of like great insights in this project. I will not like deep kind of dive into, but you can check it. And in another example, this is like an example of the work with the having a competence in some field, we can gather another data which is available, publicly available, and because we have competence, we can analyze this data and produce some knowledge out of it. Yeah, so this is one of the examples. It's the Holocaust Museum in Washington. I'm sorry, all my examples are here very like westernized and not really, it's quite random examples, but I was just wanted to clear what I mean by my dots in my presentation. Yeah. And this one is like, they produced early warning project, it is called. They produced the kind of handout and the statistical model for recognizing on early stages the possibility of huge atrocity for kind of Holocaust events in contemporary countries. So they just produced a statistic model and some more than 30 variables which they monitor using the publicly available data, and they can it can kind of predict the dangerous situation in contemporary countries. So they were using their competence, yeah, in this field. It's not their data actually; it's data of the publicly available data. And this one is just one example of what I've done with our data in 2019 before the pandemic, and which I will continue to do. It's just an example because the point why I show it is that because the data analysis is quite expensive thing to do, yeah, and not all the museums can afford it. A lot of people working in the museums, I think, will turn to learning some kind of digital tools for working with their data themselves. I mean, the competence will arise. Is it correct in English? I don't know. That's just my example. Yeah, and there is also a question of ethics which arises in terms of working with data of collections and digital data. There are also two examples from this book. I read recently this recent book. I'm sorry, I made a mistake in the name of the author, Anastasia Tarasova. I'm sorry. Yeah, and I just mentioned it because she's discussing a lot of cases which can be useful and we can learn from that cases. They are also quite old, as you can see, because it's the end of 20s and beginning of the 2000s and beginning 2010s. But all these two examples are very useful in terms of how to work with the public and with some sensitive questions which arise the publication of digital data of your collections and whatever. It can be very relevant in different situations all over the world, not only for Western museums, I guess. Because yeah, that was one of my concerns of working in digital space, actually. Yeah, and maybe the last one is what we could do, and what is very difficult to do for a lot of museums, because museums are quite, in my opinion, conservative institutions, which were shaped like a couple of centuries ago, as we know them till nowadays. It's like turned to from the very didactic, a bit arrogant way of presenting the materials and like teaching to the more collaborative work with the public, which is, we are very far from this. I mean, my institution, in terms of my department, I don't want to say about the other departments in my institution, but I think that we are very like conservative, small, conservative in terms of how we, the workflow, yeah, because we gather materials that is in physical space, we digitize them, but we are not in the constant like collaboration with the general public. Yeah, we accept researchers for work with the, which is quite an elitist practice, I would say, yeah, for work with the materials, but we publish them online. So we have a huge project of online catalog, and I think we will go, I mean, anyone should go this direction and would go this direction, I mean, in terms of how institutions will follow the situation. And this one, it's also an example of what I called here crowdsourcing, like working with, inviting public or interested public to collaborate and to make an input into the work of in raising the competence and like increasing the knowledge kept by the museum. So that more or less that's all. And yeah, the main things are like the ethical questions, access, funding, because it's I didn't touch it, but it's a huge question. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.